what if we started seeing failure like we see our time and like we see our money? In other words, when we put money into, we're at the beginning of the year, when we put money into an investment, you know what we're after? A return on investment. When we spend time on something, we as leaders, we're always looking, what's the return on my time? What if we looked at failure as if it needed an ROF, a return on failure? If we realized that in every failure, there was this return that we could get. Now, John's now taught publicly in public settings 3 times this idea of a return on failure. In fact, the last time he taught it was in San Francisco, and he said, I'm going to write a book on it. So I'm not going to go deep into what John did there, but I'm going to tell you something that occurred to me when this idea of a return on failure hit me. What if we all realized that failure was a part of leadership? It's just a part, it's a part of it. It's a part of life. It's a part of leadership. It's a part of getting better. Now we go into risk. We go into audacious dreams being chased with this concept. I'm going to fail. It's going to happen. What is going to be my ROF? What is going to be my return on failure? And then I came up with this idea, and John is going to take this and make it better too, I'm quite sure. But what if we looked at failure in 4 categories? What if we looked at it first as to get a return on failure, fail first? Now, I wish I could tell my 20-year-old self, hey, Mark, be the first one to fail. I wanted to be the first one to not fail. Everybody else around me failed. Let me learn from them. I don't want to fail. What if we said, hey, I want to fail first because I know that failure is the way to success. So therefore, the quicker I fail at something that's bigger than me, the quicker I can accomplish something that's bigger than me. Let's fail first. What if number 2, we tried to fail fast? Hey, I'm going to get this failure thing and I'm going to get to it. So many times we're in the middle of failing, and rather than admit we're failing, we try to cover it up and prolong the failure. What if we just went, boom, I'm failing. And we fail fast, admit it fast, and can get on with the lesson rather than prolonging the failure and living in the failure. Just fail fast. Thirdly, why don't we fail frequently? So many times I felt like, oh, I'm going to fail once in my life. It better be a doozy. Or that's the last time I'm going to fail. And we make these decisions as if a leader only fails once and then he grows up. She is now wise and she failed and it will never happen again. Well, it's not worked like that for me. If it has for you listening and watching today, kudos.
Good.
So I think we need to realize along the path of leadership, failure is going to happen, but it's going to happen frequently if we're trying big enough things. And then the final thing, this comes straight from John, is fail forward. Never fall backward, never fail and retreat, but fail always with anticipation that there's something big around the corner. So to answer your question, I wish my 52-year young self, yes, I said young, could tell my 22-year-old self, because I thought I knew everything as a 22-year-old, that, hey, it's okay, you're going to fail, just get a return on it. I think life would have been a lot better.
I agree. And where do we get that from? I don't know if we just perceived it. And I don't know if there are so many of you who are driving to work or going to an appointment right now or just listening in the privacy of your home and you're listening to this. But I know when John said, he had his audience that he was speaking to at the time, say it to each other. But I want you to say it to yourself in the car or wherever you're listening right now. And I want you to take a moment just right now and say it out loud. I'm going to make mistakes. Just do me a favor and say that right now.
I'm going to make mistakes.
I'm going to make mistakes.
Oh.
And I think there are so many people, I know that it's been me, and I've been a leader long enough of others, and I know you have as well, Mark, long enough to know that there are some people who are really frozen, fearful of making a mistake for some reason, either of what that meant when they were a kid in their home, either because something that happened to them in school or in a job or somewhere where where maybe even wasn't how they felt, is maybe their job or their parent or their teacher or a coach. Someone made them feel foolish or dumb or terrible or a failure even because they failed. And so because of that time, because of the mistake that they made, And it might have even been a doozy, my friend. You might be listening today and you made a doozy of a mistake. And for some reason, you can't get past that to make future mistakes. Like, oh, Mark and Tracy and John, you don't know the mistake I made. You don't know this mistake. And there is no clarifying mistake that's like, well, if you make this mistake, you can't move forward. No, the four rules Mark just kind of gave us, the four kind of failing forward steps: fail first, fail fast, fail frequently, fail forward, that Mark just gave us. That's for anyone, no matter what kind of doozies you've made in the past. We can always fail forward. But Mark, was there a time in your life, because I think all of us in our past could go back to a place in our life where we had a failure that either embarrassed us, shamed us, made us feel really bad or dumb. Was there a time in your life where it clicked for you? Where was it a mistake that you made that you realized, wow, the fear of that mistake was far worse than the actual consequence of that mistake that helped you move forward? Or was it just kind of a maturing process of several mistakes that you realized you kind of talked yourself through it?
Yeah, I love this question, Tracy, because there are several mistakes that took the sting out of failure. It really is. I think of one. I tell the story. I think I've told it on this podcast. I'm sure that I have, of before I started working with John, because of some colossal series of failures and mistakes. I found myself counting potato chips. My poverty line was a bag of potato chips. If I could afford a bag of potato chips, I could count them out and make those potato chips last an entire week if I did my math right and if I kept my appetite in check. And that was truly, I started with John Maxwell's organization, truly counting out potato chips to make bags of potato chips last a week. I had nothing, literally nothing. Bankrupt, no money. I wasn't bankrupt. I paid all my bills and all that. I didn't have to declare myself bankrupt, but I truly was bankrupt, relationally, financially, emotionally. And I've come to realize that money and having money in the account is nice, but it is not essential. In other words, I take risks now financially. Just recently, in the last couple of years, we've bet everything in a belief that we can make our future bigger, better, brighter. And I'll be honest with you, I signed these documents, I mortgaged house, I did all this stuff, and I didn't even think about it. I'm like, wow, I've lost everything before. There's a rebound in me. And so I never want to lose that and allow acquired possessions to stop me from risking those for the future and the betterment of others around me. And so that would be one example. When you go through that, and I was there because of some mistakes. I did not have to go the destitute route. I made mistakes to get there. But one of my takeaways from that is monetary possessions and financial gain is nothing but a tool to do greater impact. It is not a controlling mechanism to stop me from risking greater impact in the future.
I think it's critical to point out here, crucial to point out here to our listeners. I think they can hear you say that and think, maybe they're assuming. I'm going to make an assumption here. You might be listening and think, oh, Mark Cole can do that. He has the means to make those big steps and mortgage his house or buy all in and not think about it because there's a big safety net underneath there. But what you're saying is you have actually taken away the safety net when you do those things. You aren't leaving a little safety net. You are going all in on something. And these are big deals and big all-ins. And you don't just wake up one day and you get to go big all in. It starts in the potato chip counting days when you don't have a whole lot and you go all in, when there isn't a whole lot to lose, but you're kind of saving your face, saving skin, saving your reputation and what your parents might think or your family might think or your reputation. And those little steps that you took back then when you didn't have a lot to lose, but food for the week, built your security, your confidence to where you can get to that place today. So I think there are probably listeners who might downplay those risks that you take to go all in. And I don't think we can do that fairly without understanding that it's been a whole process to get you there. So I'm thinking now, let's say we have people who, let's flip it a little bit. Maybe they're leading people who are frozen with the fear of making mistakes. And if they don't know their people well enough, which it's really important that we know the people that we lead, they might not understand what is holding them back, those fears that are maybe rooted in childhood, rooted in something in young adulthood that have them, gripped with fear from making a mistake in their professional life. So can you talk a little bit to leaders who are leading people or maybe a whole group of people in their organization who are gripped with fear and who aren't taking necessary steps or risks in their professional lives that are necessary in order for the team to move forward? How does a leader move the team forward if they're gripped with fear of mistakes?
I think that you really got to grasp what John's saying in point number 2. Don't make the biggest mistake of all, which is doing nothing. I love what you said. There is no safety net when you're going all in. That defies the whole concept of being all in, pot committed,
right.
over it. There's no safety net. I'm out if
right.
this doesn't work. Somebody else has to come and step in because I couldn't make it work. And I think that we've got to get that mindset, because oftentimes we risk what we can manage rather than risk what we can't manage. And when we risk what we can't manage, that's all in, and that's making a decision. I'm not going to sit here and do nothing. And that I think that's the biggest thing, Tracy, to capture in this lesson is, what is it? John, in the middle of this lesson that he's talking right now, he said he was asked the question a long time ago, what would you try if you knew failure wasn't an option? What a great question. Remember that? You've been asked that question. It's one of those questions. What's the 2 greatest days of a person's life? It's one of those rhetorical questions we've heard over and over again. What would you risk if you knew failure wasn't an option? Or what would you try? John said, I've got a better question for us. What would you risk if you knew failure was going to happen, but you would learn from it? Oh, so there's something so big that I can go in and calculate. I'm probably not going to make it, but it's going to be okay. That's the mindset that we're after, because I believe back to this quote I used at the very beginning, failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of success. Ariana, that is exactly right. Ariana Huffington had it right. Success and failure are not opposite. They are codependent. For you to really be successful in your life is going to mean how big you are in your failures. John said it. What was it? Point number 7 says, remember that the size of the person, not the size of her mistakes, determines success or failure. Failure is not failure if you become better in the middle of it. Or failure is not final if you become better in the middle of the experience. That one thing, if I could release all of you from feeling like failure is final and failure is defining of who you are, I believe those are the 2 greatest sources of fear that stops people from trying something so big that failure is probable.
I agree. Well, I will let you close this out, but I just wanted to give one more encouragement to our friends. Whether you're watching or listening, you might be having your mind blown a little bit, and a little bit of fear is creeping in. Like, dare I believe this? Dare I trust John enough to take me to this next place? And I just want to encourage you. His last point was, allow your mistakes to take you to the next level. Let your attitude about your mistakes, forgive yourself, leave it in the past. It's in the past. Leave it there. Don't carry it into your future, friends. And let this be something that really, your attitude, let it determine the altitude of where you go, friends. We're for you.
So many of you, thanks, Tracy. So many of you are listening to this and going, wow, when's John's book on return on failure coming out? I need that. And guess what? You're going to have to wait. But I know out of literally thousands of new listeners and viewers every single week, I know that there's new people out there to John's world. And there's a book that he's written on this that I believe will really help you. One is, it's right behind Tracy right there. She's got it all set up for us. But it's also this book I'm holding in my hand. Sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. And really it helps with the attitude, the perspective with which we deal with failure. I've asked our team if you would give them a discount, if the team would give you a discount as the podcast family, and they have. And so in the show notes, we're going to include a link to be able to order this book. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. We're going to give you a 15% discount when you use the keyword podcast. So make sure that you put that in there for the discount that you will receive. I will tell you, I would recommend you buy a half a dozen, and resource your team with a perspective, especially those of you that are trying audacious, BHAG things in 2022. Get your team to understand failure is not final, and that's the way to do that. There's 2 other episodes that I want to encourage you to listen to and point you toward that will help you with the same subject matter. One is Redefining Failure. It's a podcast we did not too long ago. And then the other is Failure is Not Final. Both of those podcast links can be found in the show note. And really, here's what we're trying to explain to you today. Our standout statement is this: fail forward. Make something happen that is so big that when it doesn't work out exactly how you want it to, you're big enough to stand that test. Content is king. We're in a world that content, and what I love, John, another thing that I love about you is not only do you never stop growing, you never stop thinking. You are a thought leader. And so I heard you say the other day, this has been since your 75th birthday, which, by the way, on behalf of our podcast community, happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you.
I heard you say the other day, you got 10 more books in you.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
And so you've been talking about a couple of things lately that I'd love for you to just give our podcast family a glimpse into. One of those is return on failure.
Yeah.
Give us this idea that you're working on with return on failure.
Well, really, again, the idea came from you and I having a conversation from one of our John Maxwell coaches.
Yeah.
And you were talking about how do you get a return on failure? And as soon as I heard you say that, Mark, I thought, man, I have never talked about how to get a return on failure. So I started thinking, reading, doing what I do, creating. And so I developed this teaching on how to have a return on failure. And the first time I gave it, the people went crazy. I mean, it was kind of like, we talk about return on investments, we talk about return on time, but nobody ever talks about return on failure. And I gave them, 6 or 7 ways to get a return on failure. And it worked. And it worked so well that I said to myself, this needs to be a book. And by the way, a lot of my books are birthed out of my speaking.
Yeah.
And the audience will tell you if it's any good or not. If they're all going to the restroom, probably don't want to write a book on that. And so I spoke on it and had such a good response. So now I'm working it, and it'll be a book. And I think I just see it give people such encouragement and hope that they can get a return on failure. And I can't tell you the whole thing, but the kind of the thesis is this: what would you attempt to do in your life if you knew you would fail, but you would get a positive return out of it?
And what I want to talk to you about now is to embrace the benefits of uncertainty. Let me talk to you about uncertainty today. If you and I go to the airport and, we're going to catch our flight, and we get there and we find out it's going to be delayed. Now, that's happened to every one of us many, many times. Let's say we have another connecting flight to get to our destination. Our first thought when our flight's delayed is we say, oh my gosh, I hope I don't miss my connecting flight. So now we're in a little bit of a world of uncertainty. Will my flight take off on time so I can make the connecting flight? And we begin to think in this world of uncertainty. It causes us to be a little bit stressful, a little bit uneasy. And we keep watching that board. And the longer we don't get an announcement, the more we kind of look at our watch. We're uncertain. Uncertainty creates stress. And then all of a sudden on the board, we look up there. Now we see the real time that the plane's going to leave. And hey, it's going to leave even later than we thought. And now we know something. what we know is we're not going to make our connecting flight. I give you that simple illustration because it's happened to every one of us, but here's why I give you that simple illustration. Most people feel less stress with bad news than with uncertainty. Because with bad news, I can now go do something about it. I can now make a plan. I can now look at the other alternatives. You see, uncertainty just keeps us hanging. It's almost like a trapeze artist as they're going from one bar to the other, and they're just suspended in air, and basically they're hanging. And I just want you to know that the reason that many people are insecure at this time is not because we're in a crisis and they're getting bad news. Well, that's definitely going to hurt. But it's because they don't know what's happening. They don't know what's going to happen. In the last 3 days, I have read 18 articles about the coronavirus and leadership connected. And they all had only one thing in common, and that is not one article had anybody that knew for certain when this was going to be over, or how many people were going to die, or what the financial effects were going to be to you and to me and to all of us because we've gone through it. You see, uncertainty is full in the air during this crisis time. So how can I help you this week? Well, I'm thinking about uncertainty, and I would like to talk to you about how to embrace and even benefit from the uncertainty. I'm going to give you some things that will just kind of help you during this suspended time, okay? So let's get going. Uncertainty, number one, takes us out of automatic. You see, what we really like is we like our life on automatic. That's one of the values of habits, good habits. Good habits, we can go do things and we really don't have to think about them and just kind of cut through it quickly. And automatic is a good thing. Most of us really like our day just to kind of be automatic. When I think of automatic, I think of what it likes. It likes order. It likes things to be natural. It's full of automatic is full of assumptions. Automatic loves predictable, enjoys comfort, embraces certainty. That's what automatic looks like. A crisis is exactly opposite of automatic. Total opposite. You see, a crisis is a wake-up call, and it wakes us up out of automatic. One of the reasons I wrote my book several years ago on intentional living was because it was a book that I wanted to help people get out of automatic, to be intentional in their actions and their thoughts so that they could maximize them. Because let me tell you something about automatic. Although we love automatic, you and I don't maximize anything when we're on automatic. The reason? We're not paying attention. We're just let it go as it always has gone. And so therefore, when we're on automatic, we lack awareness. We lack intuition. Automatic removes all of that. And so we have to understand that we have to shift from automatic to intentional. And the moment that we begin to become intentional in our thinking, we go back to what I always teach, and you've seen me teach it before. I'm going to just share it with you again real quickly. Everything worthwhile is uphill. And the reason I love that statement is because it's not only true, but it doesn't allow you to be on automatic. A crisis, the difference is that everything worthwhile is uphill, and this is what uphill looks like in good times. It's all uphill still, even in good times. Here's what uphill looks like in a crisis. It's just a steeper hill. And what you and I have to understand and embrace is the only way that we can have this wake-up call to get us out of automatic, that we can excel through this crisis, is to become very intentional in our thoughts, in our actions, not accept our life, but to begin to lead our life. Let me give you a quick example of having a wake-up call out of automatic. When I was 51, I had a heart attack. And I can tell you that was a wake-up call out of automatic because I was on a good path. Things were going well. In fact, hey, the night I had the heart attack, I was going to the Christmas party of my companies. 'Tis the season to be jolly. I was going to be with people I loved, and we were going to enjoy each other and salute the success we had. I was on automatic, and I had a heart attack. Now that wake-up call shifted how I thought. In fact, I wrote this down because I don't want you to miss it. When I had the heart attack, one of the things I quickly, in my wake-up call, realized was that I had to live in the moment now, because it's all I have. No longer did I ever assume I had a day I didn't maybe have. When I had that heart attack, the wake-up call for me to get me out of automatic was the fact that I not only had to live in the moment, but I had to fulfill my purpose. I was born for a reason. Get on it, John. You're getting another chance. That wake-up call that I had told me that I was going to have to be intentional, just what I'm talking to you about right now. I had to be intentional so that I could maximize my life, and getting out of that automatic. That wake-up call also shared with me that I had to be grateful. Just be grateful, because there's no guarantee of tomorrow. I embraced each day after my heart attack much more than I embraced it before. Now, what am I talking about? That's what a crisis does. And I'm talking to you about how to embrace the benefits of uncertainty. Number one, uncertainty takes us out of automatic, and that's a good thing. Number two, uncertainty provides us leadership opportunities. It's leadership time. It's leadership time. Trust me. And guess what? There's not a time now, no more better than right now, when people want to be led. During the crisis, people look around and say, where's the leader? Where's the leader? I want to follow somebody. It's leadership time. You see, here's what I want you to understand. The people want it, and the leaders love it. They love it. I'm very sad because we're in a crisis, but I can tell you there's something within me that is alive during a crisis. And as I'm having the privilege like this right now, speaking to you, it just brings the best out of me, because I just know that maybe you need me now more than you've ever needed me. And maybe the message I have, you need more than you ever needed any message that I have. And so when speaking in a crisis, guess what people want? People want security. They want guidance. They want authenticity. They want understanding. They want care. They want help. They want hope. They want answers. They want consistency. They want involvement. They want visual assurance. And in a crisis, we who are leaders get to give that to people. And in that crisis is where that problem is. But the issue is, every problem, every opportunity is surrounded by a problem. You never see an opportunity alone. You see the problem, not the opportunity. You have to literally get through the problem to get to the opportunity. And guess what? During this crisis, all we see is problems. But let me tell you something. In every problem we see, if we can get through it, if we can get to it and through it, guess what? Inside that, that's where the opportunity is. And I don't want you to miss it. So we are surrounded by visual problems. Hang on, don't miss this. We are surrounded by visual problems with hidden opportunities. I either look at the visual problem and shy away from it and say, oh my gosh, I don't want to go there. Or I look at the visual problem and say, I'm going to go there. Inside of there is a way to have a breakthrough. I know it is. There's always an answer. I don't want you to miss the opportunity, because it's all around us. It just looks like problems right now. Because let me tell you something. When you miss an opportunity, somebody will find it. So I love it when people say, well, I lost that opportunity. I said, oh, don't worry, somebody found it. But I want you to find it. That's why we have these times together. I want you to see the problems around you have within them the seed of opportunity. In fact, take a moment and just call a time out for yourself and ask yourself this one question. What opportunity is around me right now? Look around. But what opportunities around me? Now, when you look around, you see the problem. So which problem do you want to pick? that has the opportunity within it. My friend Chuck Swindoll said, we are faced with a series of opportunities brilliantly disguised as impossible solutions. That's where we live right now. So embrace these benefits of crisis and adversity because it provides leadership opportunities for us. It takes us out of automatic. Number 3, it keeps us focused on today. You see, we're all uncertain about the future. The only thing that's real clear to us right now is today. I mean, let's put it this way. You and I can't Google COVID-19 right now and ask when it's going to disappear. It's not going to give you the answer. So because of this uncertainty, what leaders realize is that their best work is going to be taking care of today very well. And Mark Cole, CEO of all our John Maxwell Enterprise, Mark understands that so well. And he and I have had many conversations about that. And Mark is saying to me, because I love it, because I've mentored him and he understands the focus on the day. What do we do? What's Mark trying to do right now? What am I trying to do? What do you need to try to do? Very simple. Take care of your people, take care of your clients, and take care of yourself. Now, you say, is that all I've got to do? No, I didn't say that. But I'm saying you got to do that every day. This is where we focus on today. In fact, every evening I'm asking myself this question: did I lead well today? Because today's the only day I've got. And today has a crisis. Unless I'm missing it, this day wasn't void of a crisis. We didn't have a break in it. I mean, it didn't all of a sudden say, okay, today's going to be an easy, more automatic day. No, today's got a crisis. So I asked myself in the evening, did I lead well today? And I asked myself another question, just personal. Did I live well today? Did I lead well and did I live well? Because let me tell you something. Hang on. Here we go. If I prepare well today, I won't have to repair tomorrow. Don't miss it. If I prepare well today, I won't have to repair tomorrow. The other truth is, if I don't prepare today, I will repair tomorrow. So the clarity is now. And by the way, everything around us is changing. That's what a crisis does. And so in the midst of this change, guess what I have? I have the gift of today and I have the gift of time. In my life, this may not be true in your life. In my life, I have more time to do things than I've ever had before because much of my responsibilities were cleared when this crisis came. So the question is not, do I have time? The question is, am I utilizing that time? Am I focusing today? And am I making myself better? Am I taking the gift of time I have? Am I maximizing it for my people? Am I maximizing it for you? Am I maximizing it for myself? You say, the question is, did I build in the crisis or did I get buried by the crisis? It's your call. Here's what I know. Taking care today will help you build during the crisis. Number 4, one of the advantages and benefits of having uncertainty in our life is that it reintroduces us, and I love this word, reintroduce. It reintroduces us to humility. Now, maybe you are better than I, and maybe you don't need this, but I have a tendency to kind of work in my own strength, and when things are going good, I'm not a reliant person. In fact, one of my struggles in my early struggles of faith was that I had a tendency to rely on myself more than I relied on God. And if I saw it, I just did it, and off I went. And so with the process of self-reliance, slowly humility ebbs out of that. Because humility is an awareness that life is bigger than us and we can't successfully handle life without the help of others in my world, without the help of God. And so one of the great things that uncertainty happens in my life is that it reintroduces, it gets me back to where I need to be in the area of humility. And why humility is the number one virtue, I think, of all. And why is it the number one virtue? I can tell you why. It reduces pride. It makes us teachable, relatable, civil, approachable, selfless. Now let's understand what humility is. Humility doesn't mean that we think less of ourselves. It does mean that we think of ourselves less. There's a difference. So I'm not talking about being a self-depreciating person. We don't need that. But it does mean that instead of me thinking a lot of myself, I began to think a lot of others. You see, humility is the bridge between success, what I've done for me, and significance, what I intentionally want to do for others. And I can tell you, when we're in uncertainty, we don't have answers. It takes the bravo out of leadership. It takes well, come to me, here, follow me. You know what? When we raise our hands during a crisis of uncertainty and say, follow me, to be honest with you, we're going where we haven't gone either. So we need help. We need help from you and each of the people on the team. We need help from God. So uncertainty reintroduces you, to humility. Number 5, uncertainty requires us to be creative. It requires you and me to look around and say, okay, I'm going to have to think of some new things here, because what is normal is no longer normal. Now, you know the characteristic, because I teach this all the time, of creative people is that they believe there is always an answer. Trust me, that keeps you in the creative game. If I believe there's always an answer, I stay in the creative game. If I don't think there's an answer, why play the game? So the tenacity, which is needed in a crisis and uncertainty, the ability to follow through, all of that is based upon, I know there's an answer. Remove that from the picture, and I lose my stamina. I lose my resilience. You do it. There is always an answer is the driving force of a creative person. And a crisis, what does a crisis do? Uncertainty, it squeezes that creativity out of us. So here's what I showed you. In the best of times, when there's no crisis, in the best of times, when I'm talking to people about creativity, I give them an expression that you already know. You've heard it thousands of times. The expression is, get out of the box. Get out of the box. Now, that's in good times, because the box isn't where we need to be. The box may give you security. The box may give you the familiar, but the box isn't where tomorrow is, and it's not where your potential is. You got to get out of the box. That's in good times. In a crisis, in times of uncertainty, blow up the box. It's a whole new day. You don't even have a box. Wow. So what happens? When you blow up the box, you can't go back to that secure environment that you know. You can't go back to what has always been done. A beautiful illustration of that is, again, when the coronavirus came, and Mark and I, and we were over in Israel with some of our key players, and Mark is having to lead from Israel with his team over here, and then the coaches around the world. And I just so admired how he every day stayed in the game, and I was just there to serve him, and I didn't need to butt in, but almost every day he'd come over to me and he'd bounce off kind of what he was thinking, and I would just love on him and do my best to mentoring and help him just do this whole process, okay? And so, finally I could remember the day where I could tell you I could share where we were standing outside of the hotel in Israel when he looked at me and said, I'm going to have to cancel the conference for coaches. 3,500 coaches were going to come to this conference. It's a rallying time for the tribe. It's the highlight of the year. We do it twice a year, but it's a highlight. This is where we gather together, and I just encourage one another and stay focused on our mission. He said, we're just going to have to cancel. I said, good call. And you know why he did it? It was best for the people. He put the people first. So then he comes to me and says, I got an idea, John. I'll tell you what, we'll cancel the physical conference, but let's go online and do social media and virtual. Let's have a conference. And guess what? We can go from 3,500 coaches, which are basically new coaches who have just joined us, to 33,000 coaches. We can include all of our coaches around the world. Guess what? Because we're going to go online, we can expand. Now, watch how creativity works. You see, the crisis creates the opportunity to be creative. So now all of a sudden we go from one place, one group of people, 3,500 potential, to 34,000 potential around the world. And then Mark comes back to him and says, John, I'll tell you what we're going to do with your section. We'll still be online with our coaches and equip them and do the things that we need to do with them. But let me tell you what we're going to do. We're just going to put you out on all social media. Your message needs to be heard by everyone, not just our coaching team. And so we're going to put you out there. And so we went from 3,500 to 33,000 to 1 million. And it's much more than 1 million now because it's gone viral. That's what a crisis does. It gets us out of the box. It's the difference between a good coach and a great coach. All good coaches have a pre-game plan, but only the great coaches make good halftime adjustments. And you win the game in the second half. It's the halftime adjustments, the crisis, what we're going through right now, what we're experiencing. It's the halftime adjustments that bring your team to victory. And I'm just going to say this because we're talking about creativity. When we talk about we're not going to go back to normal, there's going to be a new normal. I can tell you, I can already start to see some things just pop up above this crisis. This is going to change. Education's going to change. All the online work that kids are doing, they've never done this much online work, and they've never done this much online work in a long period of time. You develop a habit in 30 to 60 days. Can I tell you something? There's kids online right now and saying, you know what? I don't think I need to go back to the university. I think I can finish my degree right here. It's a lot cheaper. I'm home. Whoa. It's going to change. Work at home, businesses. There are people today, they're working at home and they're thinking, you know what? In cities, that's an hour and a half commute that I make every day one way. 2-3 hours maybe lost in a commute. I wonder if I could do this. I wonder if I could do this at home. Now, businesses are going to say, do we need the office space we need? Colleges and schools are going to say, do we need all the facilities that we have? I just gave you a tip of the iceberg, but what's happening? The crisis and uncertainty is giving us a different way to live, which out of it comes creativity until some of the things, not all the things, but some of the things, changes we have, we're going to be better on the other side because we had the crisis, because it's just going to give us a new way of thinking and a new way of doing. Okay, one more advantage and benefit of uncertainty. Number 6, it tests our teaching. It tests my teaching. Here's what I mean. As a leader, I'm constantly teaching, and I'm giving people words. I'm writing books. I'm doing what I'm doing now. I'm giving you words, and in good times, words come very quickly, easily, and cheaply. But in a crisis, we find out if there's a gap between the leader's words and the leader's actions, because you see, the crisis is not a teaching forum now, it's a living forum. And all of a sudden, what I taught when things were going well have to have the pressure and the heat and the fire of things when they aren't going well to see if what I taught is what I live, because all great leaders, what they teach is what they live. You can't separate the two of them. So there's a gap. Many times crisis has a gap of, here's what I said in good times, here's how I live in bad times. This is the principles I taught in good times, but now that the bad times are here, boy, this is what I find myself migrating to. And so, for example, in leadership, what do we teach? People first. We add value to people. That's who we are. That's what we do. We are people of value who add value to people. That's who we are. So when the crisis comes, we ask ourselves, we find out, are we really people first, or are we me first? Are we looking for ways to escape and not have much harm to us? And well, I'm so sorry about those people. One of the things I so admire about Mark as I've watched him is he's constantly said people first. People first. We're losing money. It's not good. People first. People first. We're not We're not able to hold on to some of the things. People first. People first. You see, uncertainty tests our words. And if our words and our actions come together during a crisis, guess what? That's where we get moral authority. When we get through it, the people say, okay, I heard him in the good times, but I watched him in the bad times. And they're congruent. They're compatible. He is who he says he is. She is who she says she is. Okay. Can I have, 6 more minutes with you? There's just one other add-on, and I know I could stop now, but I don't want to stop quite yet, because I feel that I'm helping you. Because as I think of what I've taught about how embrace the benefits of uncertainty, let me just take you a little farther, just wrapping this up. Give me just a few more minutes. So let me share with you what leaders have to offer people during times of uncertainty. Because there's really no playbook to pick up as a leader and say, here's what you offer to people when things are uncertain. So let me give them to you. And these are just personal. They're kind of easy. Here's what's beautiful. Everything I'm going to share with you right now, you can do for your people. You can do this for your family, your friends, your team. Okay, here we go. Offer, number one, continual hope. It's just the fuel that gets people through the day, okay? And let me just say, this hope, let me define this maybe differently than any time I've talked to you during this crisis time. What I want you to do is I want you to take reality, what is, and I want you to surround it by hope. Reality is the core of what you have to deal with, but hope is what keeps people going. James Stockdale, when he was the highest enlisted officer that was in the Vietnam War, a prisoner of war. And when he came through it, they interviewed him and they asked him how he made it through. And he said something that was very interesting. He said, some people made it, some people didn't make it. He said, the people that were pessimistic, of course, didn't make it. He said, the people that are optimistic stayed longer and hung in there longer, but they didn't make it either. He said, the ones of us that made it, the optimists said, wow, we're in prison, but boy, by Thanksgiving, they'll come and rescue us. So, well, it didn't happen. Oh, by Christmas, they'll come and rescue us. Well, by my birthday, they're going to come. And they kept setting a date of relief and optimistically without any sense of realism too. And they kept getting disappointed, finally they gave up. And Stockdale said very simply, he said, every day I realized it was tough. I didn't like it. I had no idea how long it would go. So I realistically said, this could be a long time. But he also said, but my optimism said, but we will be delivered. So his optimism allowed him to have realism that gave him tenacity to get through. That's the kind of hope you want to provide for your people. Number two, give them grace and compassion. During a crisis, during uncertainty, everybody needs a break. You just got to give people a break. Here's what I know about you, about me, about all of us. Most of us are not our best under stress. And so as a leader, when I see stress come into a person's life, most of the time, I'll say to myself, they won't be operating at their best level right now. And I consider that, and I give them a break. I give them compassion and grace. I extend that to them. By the way, I do think one of the differences between leaders and followers is I do think that during the crisis for leaders, it brings out their best. I believe that for leaders, stress makes them better. But for most people, and we're talking about most people, our families, people we lead, give them a break. Give them some compassion. Number three, offer them thoughtfulness. Be thoughtful. What I mean by that is just walk slowly through the crowd. Listen to them. Listening is so important. Hear their voices. Reflect. Come back to things that they've said and build on it. May they look at you and realize that you aren't making decisions rashly, that you're deliberate, you're thoughtful, you're considerate. there's a grace and a maturity in that kind of leadership that gives people confidence in you. Number 4, be patient and calm. Because everybody's adjusting, and when everybody's adjusting, emotions are not very stable. And again, just like stress, when people are adjusting, they are not at their best. And what happens is during this kind of a crisis, I haven't really talked about this. Maybe I'll do this in a next, maybe another lesson. Visual awareness of the leader and his or her conduct is huge for people. In other words, during a crisis, if the leader is calm, the people feel secure. Your demeanor, your actions as a leader, so if you're calm, if you're patient, it just sets everybody at ease. Number 5 is just offer them your best preparation. You don't have all the answers, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be looking for answers. And as a leader, you hope for the best, but what do? You prepare for the worst. And by the way, you don't prepare for the worst without hoping for the best. And you don't hope for the best without preparing. They've got to stay together. They've got to stay together. This is not either or, this is both and. Offer them continual communication. The more nervous people are, the more they want to hear your voice. Don't just talk, though. That after a while can get on anybody's nerves, even in a crisis. When you talk, ask yourself, am I sharing something that's helpful to them? Am I sharing something that perhaps I've never shared with them before? It's kind of like when I come and have these times with you, I look and say, okay, what can I give you that's new, fresh, that will maybe another insight, maybe a different perspective? Offer them, of course, be trustworthy. Give them trustworthiness. People, more than anything else, just more than looking for your answers as a leader, they want to trust you. When I trust a person, it doesn't mean that they always do the right thing or that they always have the right answer or they always make the right decision, but it does mean that I can count on them. They're reliable. I can lean on them. And then I would just say what I shared earlier, and that is just keep focused on today. And here's what you want to do. You want to help people get small wins, WINS. You want to help them get small wins today. If they can just get a win or two, just a win or two every day, those wins begin to compound. And after a few weeks in the crisis, they can look back and say, I've had a dozen pretty good wins here. It's not been easy. It's been uphill all the way. But just help them win a little bit, give them small wins, and then, get in the game with them and applaud them and do that. And the reason we focus on today is because you just want to take control of what you can control. Most of the stuff in this crisis and uncertainty we can't control.
He said, with so much pain and distrust and tension in our society right now, how do we navigate long-lasting transformational change? John?
Well, a couple of things. It's a great question. Let's talk about trust. Let's just talk about trust. In fact, I think there are 3 questions that all followers ask of a leader. And the 3 questions are, do you like me? Can you help me? And can I trust you? And I think those are 3 very valid questions. I mean, who wants to follow a leader that doesn't like them? Because the first thing they'll do is they'll manipulate you and move you for their advantage. Who wants to follow a leader that's incompetent? Hello, you're not going to get where you want to go with that. But this issue of trust, and so what I say to myself all the time is, that's not the question followers should be asking me. That's the question I should be asking myself. It goes back to what Simon was saying again. When the, quote, system is broken, we're the system. Hey, wait a minute. Quit looking for someone else to bail us out, lead us up. Let's look at ourselves and say, what am I doing? How do I get involved? How do I improve myself? How do I get better? So every day I'm asking myself that question. Do I really love the people that I lead? Because honestly, if I don't love them, I ought to get out of the leadership game. I mean, is there anything worse than a leader that doesn't love his or her people? I mean, and care for them? So and if I'm incompetent, I ought to get out of the leadership game, or that's for sure, or learn how to lead. But this whole issue of trust,
Am I a trustworthy person? Am I a person? And there's a huge responsibility on trustworthiness. Pat Lencioni has this new book out. I think it's called Motives. And he basically asked, why do leaders lead? And he said there's two reasons. They either lead for reward, in other words, what's in it for me, or they lead for responsibility, which responsibility is heavy. When you sign up for leadership, this is not an easy course. And responsibility means I'm my brother's keeper, and those people are first. And so I think when you talk about something that's long lasting, not a quick fix, those are three questions we just need to ask ourselves. And forget about the followers asking. In fact, let me just say one thing. The moment the follower has to ask the question you're not asking yourself, you're already behind. And so, get out in front and ask the questions first and set the bar of excellence for yourself before somebody else has to set it for you. Go ahead, Simon.
I like to think of things when people ask societal questions. How do we restore trust? How do we build trust? I always like to think of these things in much smaller, more understandable context. I think of interpersonal relationships, right? How do we build trust with one person? We all know how to do that. Sometimes it's quicker and sometimes it's slower, but it's not immediate. It takes time and it takes reinforcement. And what happens if you violate trust? Like, what happens if you do something that violates the trust of a friend, of somebody who you care about and who cares about you, and they say to you, how can I trust you? And simply doing what you used to do, or simply promising that you can still trust me, I made a mistake. Even if you come clean and say, I made a mistake, there still needs to be now, you got to double down on working even harder. And you got to prove it, and you've got to, and one of the things I can't stand is leaders who say, prove to me why I should trust you. Leaders have to take the risk of trust the day they show up. If you declare yourself a leader, you take the risk of trust. It's the opposite. It's the leaders who have to prove why they're trustworthy to their people.
That's right. Yes.
We get the equation backwards all the time. Leaders take the risk to trust, but the rest of us, you got to earn our trust.
That's why,
Simon,
that's why I love the quote. It's wonderful when the people trust the leader, but it's even more wonderful when the leader trusts the people.
And trust is a risk. It's like love is a risk. Like, you didn't get to choose your children. You love them, right? I didn't get to choose my team. Tough. You got to trust them. Like, you got to love them too.
Yeah.
And if they fail, you don't immediately assume that there's something wrong with them. You go and again, we'll go back to what we said before. You lead with empathy. Are you okay? What's going on? We don't know what their history is. We don't know who their former boss was. We don't know. Maybe they've come from a horrible corporate culture and they've just joined your company and they don't trust anybody. And so they're going to operate to protect themselves. We don't know. And that goes back to those listening skills. I think, just think of it as interpersonal, and how we as individuals would have to act to build trust with another human being, and now amplify that. And you'll see how institutions have to act in a way to rebuild trust with populations as well.
I love that way of communicating and teaching, Simon. It just simplifies everything when you forget about the corporations and the teams, and you just break it down to a one-on-one relationship and say, how's this going to work? And because how it works in one-on-one is how it works with everyone.
Turns out organizations and societies are just collections of individuals.
That's correct.
And individuals, if you can understand the individual, you can understand the society, because societies act the same way as individuals.
That's exactly right.
It's true. It's true for companies. It's true for countries. It's true for where we are now.
Are you having a bad day? Now, I hope you're not. But I guarantee you, thousands of you that are watching me today, you are. You know how I know that? Because we all have bad days. And I may be having a good day today, but it's okay, because tomorrow I'm going to have a bad day. Trust me, life doesn't give you a series of only good days. Scott Peck said it so well in Road Less Traveled. He said, life is difficult. That's a fact. So since life is difficult, you're going to have a bad day. It's not the bad day that's so bad. The bad day only is bad when my attitude toward the bad day is bad. In other words, life hits me in reality. good days, bad days, losses, gains. But it's how I receive them that determines what kind of a day I really have. I can speak from a fact. I just recently, we were moving, and we had a major theft, and a major one, and we lost a lot of our most beautiful possessions. Lost a couple paintings of our grandchildren that are irreplaceable. And I sat down with my family, and I just said to them, it's only stuff. Understand, we're all alive. We have good health. We have another opportunity, to replace what we can replace. We have an opportunity to come together and pull together. I said, it's just stuff. Now, I'm not trying to minimize the loss. I'm just trying to put it in perspective. And perspective is that almost all of our bad days is all about stuff. And let me tell you something about stuff, because I got a lot of it. Stuff is stuff. Trust me. It's just stuff. So the next time you're having a bad day, look at somebody who's really having a bad day. That will give us perspective. That will help us to understand that no matter what we're going through, it could be worse. And no matter what we're going through, we need to rise above what's happening around us and see the big picture. So if you're having a bad day, hey, truthfully, only you can turn it around. Bad days don't fix themselves. They don't look at you and me and say, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm giving you a bad day. I can tell. Put a frown on your face. I'll let the sun shine so you can have a smile. No. Life doesn't do that. Life just comes as it is. It's us who have to change the bad day into a good day. So that's what I want for you. In fact, as I close Minute with Maxwell, I'm telling you right now, on your bad day, make it a good day. My father really understood the power of proximity and how bring your children around around people that have greatness. My friend Diana Kokoska has a great statement. She said, people move toward the conversations you have around them. How true that is. And my father knew that. So again, good books in my hands, good experiences, but to think positive. It was from my father that I basically learned my positive life stance. And a positive life stance is more than just a positive conversation. It's a positive way to live. And the positive life stance just simply says, good things will happen. Good things happen in life. Bad things happen in life. And it doesn't matter who you are. You're going to have good things happen to you. Have bad things happen to you. If I have a positive life stance, if I have a good attitude, the bad things that happen to me won't be as bad as if I have a negative attitude. And the good things that happen to me will be better. So therefore, I choose to think positive. I learned that, and I watched him live it. It was just incredible what I observed from him, and it just allows me to walk in sunshine. And my dad would say, John, it's not what happens to you, it's what happens in you. You don't have control of the outward circumstances, but you do have control of your inward spirit and your inward attitude. When I wrote the book, The Winning Attitude, one of the first books I wrote, really it was I think maybe it was the 6th or 7th book I wrote, but it was the first book that really sold well. Okay, let's start there. It's the first book that other people were buying beside my family. Let's go there. And when I wrote the book, The Winning Attitude, it was just basically copying all of the incredible positive thinking, positive attitude stuff that my father had given to me. Just incredible teaching. When I wrote the book, How Successful People Think, it came out of a conversation with my dad about how he thought and how he chose to think on the right things. When I wrote my first book, Think on These Things, it was out of Philippians chapter 4, verse 8, the things that are good, right, pure, think on these things. It was ingrained on me to think positively. And I look back at my life now and I say, my life was incredibly, unbelievably, beautifully changed because I chose the right attitude. And by the way, your attitude, your thinking, my father would say this all the time, is a choice. It's a choice. So the attitude that I have today, whether it's positive or negative, I chose. It wasn't something that, my boss put on me at work. And, if you had to live with my family, or if you had to work where I worked, or you had to live in the location I live in, you'd have a bad, no, it's a choice. It's a choice. And we get to make that choice. Isn't it amazing? Some of the most important things like positive thinking and attitude. In fact, I wrote a book called The Difference Maker. And the whole thesis of that book is that attitude isn't everything, but it's the main thing. And I love that. And it's the difference maker. If you have two people that you're going to hire in your company, and both of them have the same experience, pretty much the same skill set, but one has a great positive attitude and the other one has a very negative attitude. This is an IQ test. Who are you going to hire? You're going to hire the person that has the positive attitude. It's that all things being equal, if you and I are on the very same level, all things being equal, if you have a great attitude and I have a poor attitude, all things being equal, when somebody has to choose one of us but can't choose both of us, they'll choose you. I'll get left out every time. Why? Not because I lack the ability or the talent or the experience or the skill. No. You had a better attitude. It gave you a step up on me. And my father knew that and understood that and practiced that. Oh, we lived in an incredible positive attitude environment. And my father had it to the day that he died. Literally, a couple years before he passed away, he looked at me, he said, John, we were having a lunch. He said, John, what was he, 96? He said, I've been thinking about my life. He said, I think my greatest days are still ahead. As a man thinketh in his heart, my dad would teach me, so is he. It all begins there. Another lesson my father taught me, this one's huge also. Wow. This is a faith lesson, okay? Is my dad just taught me to put God first. And, one of the things that we were paid to memorize as kids, Scripture, and one of the first things I was paid to memorize was the Ten Commandments. And I can still remember sitting together in old family gatherings and standing up and quoting the Ten Commandments. And my father loved the commandment, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Just put God first. Matthew 6:33. Seek first God and his kingdom, and all of the things will be added unto you. Now, I know this is heavy faith for some of you, but just hang on with me just for a moment, because there's an incredible principle that I learned out of it. He just basically said to me that God is your creator, and God created you for greatness, and he knows what's best for you. How to turn adversity into an advantage. And there's part of this title I like, there's part of this title I really don't like. What I really want you to get is the fact that in adversity, there are certain advantages that adversity and crisis bring to us that without that adversity, we wouldn't have those advantages. We wouldn't have those opportunities. That's kind of the thesis of the lesson today. When I looked at the title, How to Turn Adversity into an Advantage, I wasn't trying to think of it in a wrong term as far as how to take advantage of people that are in adversity. That isn't that at all. I mean, remember yesterday I shared with you that in a leader's perspective, it's always the people first. What's always best for the people? That keeps a leader's motives pure and right. If you and I are constantly saying, well, what's best for my people? Because whatever is best for my people as a leader, I should be doing my very best to provide it for them. But this is a terrific lesson on the fact that in adversity, if we have the right perspective, and this is a lesson on perspective, trust me. In fact, today and tomorrow, this is a part one, tomorrow's part two. This is a perspective lesson. What I want you to catch, though, is that without any question, the adversity that you and I are going through right now does have distinct advantages for us. That I know. You say, John, how do you know that? Well, it's very simple. Every crisis and every adversity in the history of the world has turned into terrific advantage for society. Again, I remember I mentioned yesterday, every medicine you take was because there was an adversity, a problem. Somebody had something that needed to be cured, so somebody went and invented a medicine. In other words, good things come out of bad things if you have the right perspective. If you have the wrong perspective, that's not true. So this lesson is on how do I take the adversity and gain some advantage out of it for myself, for my family, for my community, for others. And when I go to perspective, here's the quote: how we view things is how we do things. So it's possible for two people to view adversity and have two different responses to that adversity. One takes adversity and turns it into an advantage, and the other one takes adversity and says, oh, I'm at a disadvantage, and I'm a victim, and they just basically lay down, and instead of getting better, they get worse. Same adversity, same situation, two total different responses. Now, the responses are based upon a person's perspective. Let me give you an example. Albert Einstein, there's a brilliant fellow. Albert Einstein said this: in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. Now, I've loved that statement for quite some time, and I share it with you because I think there's something very interesting in what Albert Einstein said. He said it was in the middle. In the middle. In fact, when I put that quote in here, I capitalized all the letters on middle. In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. You know what Einstein was saying? He's saying you have got to get into the crisis. You have got to get into the middle of the problem before you see how to get opportunity out of it. Because at the beginning, we don't understand how deep the problem's going to be. It doesn't affect us enough to take away our options so that all of a sudden we get desperate for an answer. It's not at the end. If by the end we haven't seen opportunity, to be honest with you, we just passed it. The door was back in the middle. But in the middle of difficulty, adversity, crisis, that's where Albert Einstein said, that's where we find opportunity. It's that type of thinking, perspective for you and me that I want to talk about, because trust me on this, if we have the right perspective, we're going to find that to be very true. Now, let me give you an example. Now, this is a business example. Some of you are in the business world, some of you are not. So let me just give you this one because I read it just the other day, and it fits the business community. So if you've got a team, if you've got an organization, you got a big company, small company, whatever. This comes out of Forbes. And when I was going through and reading this, the thing that really grabbed my attention was the headlines. It said the coronavirus crisis is creating problems, but it is also creating tremendous opportunities. This comes out of Forbes. And so then they gave an example. And the example they gave there, I know pretty well. And they gave the example of the Ford Motor Company. And the Ford Motor Company, if you go back about 12 years, had quite a few years consecutive of poor performance. They were in a recession, and they needed to finance. In fact, they were so desperate that Bill Ford, the father of the whole Ford clan, basically sat down and had to talk them into collateralizing and the blue Ford Oval. The thing that's most precious to Ford is that brand, that trademark. And they literally had to take that and use it for collateral to borrow money to get themselves financially in a position where they could maybe upright themselves. And then they also brought in Alan Malawi, brought in an outsider, a terrific leader. And if you know the story, it's an incredible story. It's a story of an amazing turnaround, maybe the most amazing corporate turnaround in this century. But what I want you to see is it was only in the adversity, the heavy crisis. I mean, what would make the Ford family say, okay, we're going to use this incredible trademark as collateral to borrow money? I mean, that's the last thing in the world they wanted to give up. But can I tell you something? A crisis will make you do things that you wouldn't do without the crisis. Let me just stop and talk to you for a moment. You and I both know in our heart that there are some changes we won't make unless we have to make them. Now, I speak for myself. In my life, There have been a few times I just didn't want to make the change until all the other options were stripped away from me. And one day I looked at myself and said, I've got to make the change. Well, it happened for the Ford Motor Company. And in this Forbes article, it then put three things on the advantages of a crisis. And I give this to you quickly because this is in the business field. I'm getting ready to come to you in the personal way. So stay right with me. Here's what Forbes said. First of all, a crisis changes the balance of risk and reward. And they so clearly wrote the fact that during normal circumstances and situations, we don't risk a lot. We enjoy where we are, and the tendency always is for us to stay put, not make a lot of changes. And the fear of failure overrules the risk issue. So we basically stay the same. But what happens is in a crisis, all of a sudden it helps us realize that we have to change. All of a sudden, what was kind of optional, should we change, becomes a command. We have to change. Why? Because we're in deep weeds. And so basically Forbes was saying, if you have a business, if you have a team, whatever, that there are perhaps some things in your life that you've just held pat that you should have let go a long time ago. And you're going to risk more during a crisis. And they said that was good. Number two, and I love this because it's so true, a crisis increases our focus. You see, every organization has what I would call competing priorities and conflicting priorities. Some priorities that just conflict with where you're really wanting to go, and then you have some that internally compete with what you're trying to accomplish. And so what happens is there's a lot of activity in an organization that isn't necessarily accomplishment. But what does a crisis do? We immediately begin to eliminate all of the things that are not totally essential in our business. In other words, we begin to cut. We begin to look and say, what do I have to have versus what was nice to have? And that's happening right now. I mean, it's happening everywhere over America. People are looking and they're reevaluating. And what they're doing is this crisis is causing me. I mean, I could give you a lot of personal examples in my life that I'm just saying, okay, I now have to focus on not what is wonderful, what is nice, what I would like to be included in. I have to focus on one thing, what's essential. Everything else falls aside. There's a terrific benefit in business when you begin to get rid of conflicting or competing priorities. Major difference. And say, okay, we've just got to stay with the main thing. We got to make the main thing, like Covey says, the main thing. So, as Forbes was pointing out so good, it basically, a crisis gets us to take more risk. Crisis increases our focus. And number three, what it does is it identifies leaders. Because what do leaders do during a crisis? They stand up and they stand out. You see, you can't manage your way out of a crisis. You have to lead your way. If you could manage your way, there would be small incremental changes that you can control and feel comfortable with that you would begin to allow in your life that would get you out of the issue. And that isn't going to get you out of a crisis. All of a sudden, you've got to have somebody stand up and say, wait, I'm going to lead my way out. I'm going to get creative in my thinking. I'm going to get bold in my decision making. Wow. Now, here's what I want you to see in business or in your personal life. Einstein was right. It's in the middle of the difficulty where the opportunity begins to show itself. I could give you all kinds of examples of what I can sense as a leader that's beginning to happen. Now, I don't have the back end. I don't have the whole story. I'm looking at a picture that's not complete. But let me just give you an example. What's happened in the education world? Well, what's happened in the education world is all the kids got home. Not only in elementary and high school, but universities, colleges, sent the kids home. We got to have our social distancing. And by the way, I think that was a very wise decision. I think right now, social distancing is probably the most important thing we can do to cut this out and probably, hopefully, get some answers and move on with our life. But now, so what are the kids doing? Online classes. Kids, millions of kids right now right now on online courses. Now, online courses, that's not new. That's been around for about 12, 15 years. And there has been a slow, steady increase of students taking online courses. But now they all have to do it. And here's what's going to happen. There are kids who have never taken an online course, and they're going to do that, and then they're going to look at themselves and say, wait a minute, I'm home. I can be in surroundings that are familiar to me. I don't have to go back to college if I don't want to. I don't have to. I can get a degree online. Now, I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying I can guarantee you, I promise you, that there are a bunch of students that are all of a sudden going to see that there's another way to get their education. I'm not even saying it's a better way, but I'm just saying crisis causes change. And I will tell you that steady increase in online kind of classes, after this, it's going to be like that. It's just going to increase. Why? Because a lot of kids who have never done it before tested it and said, oh, this kind of works for me. I think in the business community, when people are working from home, I think it's going to change the work environment. I really do. I'm not saying it's pro or con. It doesn't matter. What I'm wanting you to see is that crisis causes you and I to make changes that we would never make if we didn't have the crisis. The way I prefer it is to say crisis bumps us out of our comfort zone into our creative zone. That's a great statement. Crisis bumps us. In fact, if I don't get the bump, I won't get out of my comfort zone. It's the bump that gets me out of my comfort zone into the creative zone. Okay, now that's business. Okay, so for you that have organizations, teams, companies, whatever, hopefully that helps you. The rest of this lesson today and the lesson tomorrow is going to be in a very personal way from me to you. And it's going to be applicable to you personally. It's going to be applicable to your family. It's going to be applicable to all of your friends. But it's going to be just one-on-one. And I'm going to just tell you, there are some major advantages that we're going to receive out of the adversity that we're now going through. And by the way, one more thought. When we're in the middle of the crisis, where the opportunity, as Einstein says, there are two kinds of people. In the middle of the crisis, there are some people who are basically saying, how long will this last? We're all asking that, by the way. How long will this last? But there's a higher level of person who is saying, while I'm in it, how can I get better? How can I improve? What can I learn? How can I make this a stepping stone instead of a stumbling block? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk to you about bad experiences for a moment. And there are 3 thoughts on bad experiences, since we're having one, a big one. The first thought on bad experiences is this: everyone has them. and everyone is in the middle of this crisis. I mean, no one is excluded. All of us are being touched. But, some days you're a pigeon and some days you're a statue. Some days you get the privilege of dumping on someone. Some days you're the one that gets dumped on. Well, a crisis is where, let me define a crisis. A crisis is where we're all a statue, okay? We're all getting dumped on. I can think back at 2008 when the economic recession really hit us. And as a speaker, I said, wow, I've got to help people. Again, that's what a leader does. The moment there's a problem, first thought of a leader, got to help people. And so I thought, okay, how can I help people? And I remember sitting down in my office at home, and while speaking engagements and everything was canceling and everything was kind of going south, and I developed a teaching, a lecture, and it became a huge popular lecture for the next 3 to 4 years, and that is how to do good things when things are all so bad. How do you do good things? And it got out that I was going to have a teaching that how do you do good things when things are so bad? And for the next 3 years, companies, groups of people that wanted me to come and speak, they'd say, John, do that speech on how to do good things when things turn out bad. And it was just a pure teaching on, okay, it's bad, but while it's bad, we don't have to stay bad. This is the point. While it's bad, we can say, what good thing can I do? What good thing can I learn? That's perspective. That's the difference. And for 3 years, I literally went around the world, not only around the country, around the world, talking about how to do good things when things are so bad. Why? Because it gave a message of positive application and hope. You see, what we do with bad experiences defines who we become. What we do with bad experiences defines who we become. The second thought that I want to give you about bad experiences, not only everyone has them, okay? So we're all in the same boat, okay? And there's a hole in the boat, and it's going to affect all of us. Number two, no one likes bad experiences. I have never met a person who comes to me and says, you know what, John, I think I'm the most happy and fulfilled during a crisis. I just, you know what, John, I love problems. I love questions I can't answer and issues I can't solve. Nobody likes this. Nobody. I don't, you don't, we don't like it. I think we're kind of like Lucy, who just basically said one time, I don't want ups and downs, I just want ups. Okay, let's take a vote. You may be all by yourself, you may be with family members, or maybe just a couple people since we're social distancing, but every one of you do what I'm going to do. Let's all do a vote. How many of us, we want to join Lucy's club? We just want ups and ups. But in fact, I really want ups and ups, and I know you really want ups and ups. And in a real world, we don't get ups and ups. Now, fortunately, we don't get just downs and downs. But in the real world, we get ups and downs, and we've got to be like my friend in college who told me one time, he said, John, I'm never down. I said, what do you mean you're never down? He said, I'm either up or I'm getting up. Well, in a crisis, what we're doing is getting up because we've been knocked down. You see, the issue is not have we been knocked down. The issue is, do we stay down? Or do we say, I don't like down. I want to get back up. It's those who don't like down, but go from not liking it to do something about it, that action, to get back up. But none of us likes a crisis. We all have it. None of us like it. My friend Chuck Swindoll, several years ago, he sent me this, and I'm going to just read it to you. It's about Chippy, a parakeet, okay? And he starts off by saying, Chippy the parakeet never saw it coming. One second, he was peacefully perched in his cage singing. And the next moment, he was sucked in, washed up, and blown over. His problem began when his owner decided to clean his cage with a vacuum. She stuck the nozzle in to suck up the seeds and feathers in the bottom of the cage. Then the phone rang. Instinctively, she turned to pick it up. She had barely said hello when Chippy got sucked in. She gasped. She let the phone drop. She turned off the vacuum, and with her heart in her mouth, she unzipped the bag, and there was Chippy, alive but stunned, covered with heavy black dust. She grabbed him. She rushed him to the bathtub, turned on the faucet full blast, and held Chippy under the torrent of ice-cold water, power washing him clean. So she did what any compassionate person, an owner, would do. She snatched up the hairdryer and blasted the wet, shivering little bird with hot air. And this story closes by just this beautiful phrase. Chippy doesn't sing much anymore. Of course, Chippy doesn't sing much anymore. Oh, there's a whole bunch of us right now. We've been blasted, and we're just not doing a lot of singing. You see, in bad experiences, everyone has them and no one likes them. And the last thought I want to give you on bad experiences, and then I'm going to turn to perspectives in a moment, is very few people make bad experiences positive experiences. Very few. But I am talking to the few. Our time together is for me to rally the few. I don't have any illusion that I'm going to rally the masses. But right now, I'm just trying to rally you. Because if I can rally you and get you seen with the right perspective how you can get better through this crisis, guess what you can do? You can then do the same for your family. What a gift for your family if all of a sudden you become the person that shows them the light at the end of the tunnel. Wow. That's why Warren Lester said, success in life comes from not holding a good hand, but in playing a poor hand well. Wow. That's beautiful. You see, everything's changed for me. I shared with you yesterday on leading through a crisis that, I literally had dozens of speaking engagements that have been canceled, and the one that I wanted to help everybody, but one really, really, really hurt. Wow, I'd had the opportunity late April to go to the Vatican, and I had an invitation by Pope Francis to do 3 days of teaching with him on what I called a master class with the Pope on leadership. I look so much forward to time with him and time helping lift that load. And well, of course, it's all gone. It's all gone. It's all gone. So, again, when I had somebody call me and say, what are you doing right now? What I'm doing is I'm making lemonade. And that's what I want you to do. I want you to make lemonade. We've all been handed a lemon. Now, some people are going to mount that lemon. They're going to take pictures of that lemon. They're going to talk about how tough life is with the lemon. And then there are some people that are just going to take that lemon and cut that baby open and make them some lemonade. In fact, say to yourself, again, you may be by yourself. If you're not by yourself, say to someone beside you, say to someone right now, I'm making lemonade. So when people ask you, what are you doing in the crisis? Well, I'm making lemonade. See, Napoleon Hill. All right, I'm about to dig in with you. Hang on. Fasten your seatbelts. Napoleon Hill said, every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. That is a powerful statement, but my folks, listen to me carefully. It's only a true statement if your perspective is right. Don't miss this. I'm going to read the statement again, and then you determine if it's true in your life or if it's not true. Every adversity, every failure, every heartache comes with the seed of an equal or greater benefit. I will not get an equal or greater benefit from adversity unless I have a perspective that believes that truth. If I believe nothing good can come out of something that is bad, then I will never, ever take advantage of that asset. Summing it all up, friends, I'll say that you'll be best if you fill your minds and meditate on things that are true, noble, reputable, authentic, compelling, gracious. In other words, he said, you're really going to be at your best if you meditate on good stuff. And then he begins to contrast good stuff with bad stuff. He said, the best, think on those things, not the worst. The beautiful, not the ugly. Things to praise, not things to curse. Now, the Apostle Paul says we have a choice. And in a crisis, I could either think about all the things to curse, and there's a whole bunch of cursing going on and a lot of things to curse, or I can look at that and I can say, no, there's some praise in here. There's something I can be thankful for. Now, Paul, why is he asking us to focus on these things? Why is he doing this? Because he knows that a positive perspective in every situation upgrades that situation. Paul is not saying deny reality. In that verse, what did he say? He said there's some wrong things, bad things, things that you could curse. He's not denying that they're there. They're right in front of you. He's not acting as if they're not possible. They are possible. They're reality. But he's saying what we get to choose is what we think on. Wow. I love that. So, I'm going to give you a challenge. In fact, this morning, remember I said I've been thinking quite a bit from yesterday? This morning, I put this in my notes. I'm going to challenge you. This is one of the most important parts of my teaching today. I'm going to challenge you to be one of the few that take a bad experience and turn it into a better experience. Now, how are we going to do that? So write down that challenge. Okay, John challenges me to take a bad experience and turn it into a better experience. Okay, you got that? Now I'm going to get real practical with you here for the next 3 minutes. How do I do that? How do you do that? How do we take something bad and make it better? We have to be intentional. What I'm going to give you can't be accidental. It has to be intentional. I have to be intentional in 6 things right now. I have to be intentional, first of all, in my personal time. I have a more personal time than I've ever had before because I've had a whole bunch of stuff canceled in my life. So what am I going to do in the time that I have? And I hope the answer is not watch TV. I don't mean this unkindly. TV's fine. But I hope we're going to upgrade ourselves just a little bit. For example, for me, on my desk, if you went into my home right now, on my desk on the left side, right here on my desk are 6 books. 6 books that I have purposely, intentionally picked out and said, okay, in this downtime, I'm going to read these books. Now, I haven't been able to get to them until now, but I can. And so I'm going to read those books. I'm also going to make it a time of exercise. I'm going to make it a time of trying to get a little bit better and healthy and eat a little bit better in that whole process. Okay, well, that's personal. But what the question is what are you going to do with your personal time? You've got to be intentional. I challenge you to be intentional in your personal time to do something that'll make you better. Number 2, your family time. What are you going to do in your family time? I mean, you're having more family time than ever before. Margaret and I have kind of developed a list of movies that we kind of want to see at home, perhaps together, and you know, we're going to take more walks than we've taken before. In other words, what are you going to do with your family that's just going to be positive? Maybe with your family you would want to sit down and share what I'm teaching. Wow, wouldn't that be good? Sit and gather them around and say, look, this is how we need to be thinking. Here's how we need to be acting during a crisis time. Okay, how about catch-up time? How about your catch-up time? That's the third area. And I'm not talking about ketchup that you put on with fries. I'm talking about CATH. You know, I can catch up on some things that I would have never gotten to. And you know, things like, mundane things like a commitment I've made is to clean my closet out. That closet's need to be cleaned out for 3 years. Every time I go into it, it just looks at me and says, clean me out, clean me out. And I've ignored it. But I got a little time. I'm going to do that. But I'm going to have some time now to really give to a new book that I'm writing on, that I'm very excited that's going to come out soon. And so now I can really focus on that book. Okay, how about, here's a good one for you. Number 4, be intentional in your adding value time. Okay. In a crisis, people need encouragement and added value more than any other time. So why don't you every day write down one name of a person that you need to encourage, a call that you need to make, just a touch that say, I'm going to add value to these people today. Get intentional. You'll be surprised not only how it'll help the people, but how it'll help you. Number 5, I'm a person of faith. You don't have to listen to this, but I have what I call my faith time. What am I going to do as a person of faith? Well, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to develop my trust muscle. I'm going to really work on that. And a trust muscle basically means I'm going to have to trust God to give me strength and peace when I don't have all the answers. And by the way, if you're not a person of faith, you go ahead and do that. You'll find out how he'll help you too. He's no respecter of persons. He loves you every bit as much as he loves me. But I'm going to work on my trust muscles. I'm going to work on my gratitude now, because gratitude is most hard to express during difficult times. And I'm going to work on my prayer life. In fact, I spent time in prayer for you today. Okay, just asking God to give you strength during this time. And then, okay, the 6th thing I want you to work on is your thinking time. Your thinking time. And I want you to put yourself through a positive grid. This morning, I wrote 3 questions I want you to consider every day as you think. Question number 1, how will this crisis make me better? It's a great question. Give yourself 10 minutes, 15 minutes every day and say, okay, I'm going to write these questions down. I'm going to think upon this. How will this crisis make me better? There are answers. If you think about it, you'll find them. Number 2, how will I use this crisis to help other people? Wow, that's huge. And by the way, you're going to get an abundance of answers in that, because everybody needs help in a crisis. And number 3, what action will I take? Oh my, this is great. What action will I take that will improve my situation? What action am I going to take that'll what can I do that'll just make me better? Everything worthwhile is uphill. If you've heard me do any teaching at all, because I wrote a book called Intentional Living, you've watched me use the visualization of everything is worthwhile, it's uphill. And I put my arm in the air and I just basically say, up at the top are my dreams, my hopes, my ambitions, my desires. Everything good. It's up there. It's not down here. I got to climb to get it. Now, when I say everything worthwhile is uphill, let me tell you the difference between in average times and in crisis times. In average times, everything worthwhile is uphill. And during times of crisis, everything worthwhile is uphill. It's just a higher hill to climb. But we still can climb it. You see, we are not given an overcoming life. We are giving life to overcome. There's a world of difference. I'm not entitled to winning. I'm not entitled to having an overcoming life, but I am entitled to having a life of which I can choose to be an overcomer. You see, there's a wrong perspective, and the wrong perspective is that life should be easy. I'm telling you, my name is John. I'm your friend. Life's not easy. It's all uphill. Always has been, always will be. The problem is we have uphill hopes, we have downhill habits. And downhill isn't going to get us where we want to get. So, I could give you all kind of examples. People hear me speak. I'm talking to you now. And people say, John, you're a terrific communicator. Well, I wasn't always a terrific communicator. This wasn't easy. First of all, let me give you perspective. I've spoken 12,000 times. Talk to me for a moment. If you speak 12,000 times and you don't become a great communicator, you chose the wrong field. 12,000 times. It's uphill all the way. The first time I spoke, it was terrible. Spoke for 55 minutes. I bored everybody. In fact, I went back the next year and apologized to the people that I had bored, and then I realized none of those people would ever come back to hear me the second time because I was so bad the first time. I wasn't any good. I wish you could have seen me then. If you could have seen me when I started, every one of you would be greatly encouraged. What am I saying? I'm saying very simply that it took a great amount of time, effort, energy, focus, concentration, commitment to become a great communicator. It's all uphill. Writing, it wasn't easy. Over 34 million books have been sold through my name and my writing. People say, wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. No, you got to understand, it was all uphill. My first book, Think on These Things, I talked about a little bit ago, 100 pages, 33 chapters. Do the math. That's 3 pages per chapter. It took me a year to write the book. I wasn't any good at it. The book's not any good. Don't buy the book. I had a lady the other day bought the book. She came up to me to sign it, and I was shocked. She said, I love the book. I said, you love the book? Why do you love that book? She said, I love the short chapters. She said, how did you ever think of writing short chapters? I said, lady, I wasn't any good. I ran out of gas after 3 pages. In fact, some of those chapters are 2 pages too long. It literally took me 5 books to learn how to write, literally. And I took writing courses. I had writing mentoring. It took me 5 books before I said, oh, I can write. And it took me 11 books before I ever sold much. Now, it was a process. Now, I don't want you to miss this. Everything worthwhile is uphill. Nothing comes fast. Nothing comes easy. It's all uphill. It's okay. We're working on perspective here. The moment I believe and accept that everything worthwhile is uphill, guess what I do? I expect to walk uphill all the time. If I don't believe that, I expect it to be easy. I expect it to be average. I expect to coast some. You see, my perspective that it's uphill every day, all the way, is huge. We have John Maxwell team. Okay, here's a perfect example of this. We got the John Maxwell team, and we've had huge success with it. In what, 9.5 years, 33,000 members in almost every country of the world. And people look at that and they say, oh my gosh, John, this is huge. How did you get so good? How did you pull that off? It's uphill all the way. Now let me just stop for a moment and just say to you that I'm constantly asking myself, what can I do to add value to you? Because here's what I know. A crisis never leaves you or me the same. It moves us. It either moves us forward or it moves us backward. It either moves us upward or we go down. But it does move us. And we're saying, oh, I can hardly wait for things to get back to normal. I hear that all the time. Oh my gosh, won't you be glad when this is all over? And wow, things will become normal. And oh, this will be so good. Can I tell you something? They're never going to return back to normal. Not the normal that you and I know. Trust me. There's never going to be that normal again. It's just like 9/11. After 9/11, we didn't go back to normal. I mean, every day almost I'm reminded of 9/11 through something that you or I have to do just because of safety precautions. So Max Dupree, when he said the first responsibility of a leader is to define reality, the reality is very simple, and that is that normal is gone and there's going to be massive change. Well, if the first responsibility for me is to define reality to you, my second responsibility for you is to help you make positive changes. Huge. And how do we do that? Well, I've been through a lot of changes. I've been through a lot of crisis. I'm 73. So in the 60s, I saw the assassination of some of our great leaders, John Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King. In the 70s, it was Vietnam and the incredible bitter taste that we had over political manipulation. In the 80s, we had AIDS, that for 2 years we were just trying to identify a virus. And we also had economic recession back then. In the 1990s, remember Enron and corporate undoing, and we were just kind of had lost our way ethically in that whole process. 9/11, of course, and then the 2008 recession. Now, here's what I want you to know. When things get out of control, what leaders do is they try to help people get back into control of their lives. And how do I do that? As a leader, how do I help you get back into control of your life? Well, you can control your own personal decisions. And a decision that I would hope that you would make during this crisis is a decision to personally develop and grow yourself. You see, the only guarantee that tomorrow is going to be better than today is the fact that I'm growing and I'm developing myself. I'm 73, but I'm so excited about my future because to me, I'm continually learning. I'm continually growing. There is no finish line in my life. And so how do we continue to grow? How do we continue improving ourselves? After the 2008 financial recession, I began to ask myself, how do I help other people? And I came to the conclusion back then that I was going to start the John Maxwell team. I didn't need another business. I already was quite successful in life. I had basically everything I wanted in my life. But I said, what would happen if I took people that wanted to better themselves? What would happen if I took people who wanted to better themselves? And what they need is they need good training. They need some people to good mentoring. And then what they need is somebody to put their good housekeeping seal of approval on them and say, hey, look, this person's a good person, and give them an opportunity and give them a chance. So that's why I started the John Maxwell team. And we have basically 5 lanes. We have the leadership lane. We have the entrepreneurship lane. We got the sales lane. We got the coaching lane. We got the speaking lane. And what we knew is if we could teach you these 5 lanes, you're going to find out which lane you best identify with, but we can greatly improve your life. So then I got a dream team. I got my faculty together, and I got people that were highly successful. I mean, people that were doing it now, not people who had done it or had never done it and were, quote, professors, but people that were right in the action. They knew how to build a business and they knew how to be successful with their life. And so I brought a faculty on, and then I said, I'm going to certify people. I'm going to put the John Maxwell, seal of approval on them, and I'm going to certify them after they go through this certification process. And with that, I'm going to give them credibility. I'm going to give them opportunity. And I can tell you today, over 33,000 coaches around the world, and I can tell you my greatest joy is everywhere I travel, internationally, nationally, everywhere I travel. Here's what happens. I see John Maxwell team members totally fulfilled because now they have a purpose and mission in life, and that is to add value to people. Because John Maxwell team members, we tell them all the time, we are people of value who value people and add value to people. So just I'm going to go to the next perspective in just a moment, but just a few questions. Questions such as, do you want to take adversity and turn it around and make, an advantage, an opportunity out of it? Do you want more for yourself? Do you want more for your family? Maybe you're saying, boy, there is no new normal. I'm going to go back. I'm not even sure I'm going to have a job. Would you like to be an entrepreneur? Would you like us to help you we've got thousands of people now that have an incredible career of adding value to people, and we equip them and train them and certify them, or maybe you want to subsidize some income and say, wow, I'm not sure I'm going to have enough when this is through. I'm going to be behind financially, all of those things. But the most important question for you is just very simple. Most important question is this one. Would you like to be part of a community that's making a positive difference in the lives of other people? That's the question. If that question resonates with your heart, and by the way, a whole bunch of you're already doing great things. You don't need to be part of a John Maxwell. This is just for the few who say, "Wow, yeah, I'd like to be part of a community that's making a positive difference." If that's where you are, I just say to you, I want you to stand on my shoulders. I'll walk alongside of you. I'll certify you. I'll do everything I can to add value to you. And if the answer is yes, then I would just encourage you to think about becoming a part of the team. Now, I'm getting ready to go to that second perspective, which is huge. But now all of a sudden, as I'm thinking about becoming a part of Team Mark, I'm going to need you to help me for a moment. And if they become a part of the team, if they want to become part of a John Maxwell team, tell them what to do real quickly, because then I want to get to the next perspective.
Yeah, if you just would want more information, John, they can go to johnmaxwellteam.com. johnmaxwellteam.com. There's a form you'll fill out. One of our team will connect with you on that.
Okay. Again, it's just for people that would like to be part of that community. I just love you all. Team members, non-team members. In fact, what was great is the John Maxwell team said, let's make your talks, John, available to everybody so that they can get the advantages of adversity. So perspective number one, we've already got that one down. And it's a huge perspective. Don't miss it. Everything worthwhile, what is uphill? Number two, the second perspective is there's always an answer. There just is. There is always an answer. I have a wonderful friend, Larry Stockstill. I was casting vision to about 5,000 leaders in a conference. It was a big vision. It was about community and country transformation. In fact, I was challenging these leaders to help me literally go and teach good values in different countries. We've had incredible opportunities. We are now in 3, getting ready to go in countries 4 and 5, going in by the invitations of the president of those countries to teach transformation through what we call round tables, transformation tables, teaching values. And it's a pretty exciting opportunity. So I cast this vision. Larry Stockstill came up to me afterwards, and he looked at me and he said, John, the answer is yes. And I said, okay, Larry, good. That's good. What do you mean by yes? He said, well, the answer is yes. Whatever you need from me, whatever you want from me, the answer is yes. I'm going to give it to you because I love your vision. I love your leadership. I believe in what you're doing. The answer is yes. And then he looked at me and said, John, I live on the other side of yes. And when he made that statement, I thought, wow, I love that statement. And that's what I want for me. That's what I want for you. And what I want you to understand in this crisis time is that there's an answer. We will find a way out. We will find a way through. There's an answer. And what happens is this: successful people know that, and unsuccessful people don't know that. If I thought that there was no answer in this crisis, to be honest with you, I'd be huddled up in the corner and I'd be a miserable person. But there's an answer. There always has been an answer. The world has always found a way, and we're going to find a way through the coronavirus. Trust me, we're going to find a way. It may be hard. It may take a long time. It won't be easy, but we will find a way. You see, the greatest gap between successful and unsuccessful people. Okay, listen to me. This is huge. Stay with me for 9 more minutes. If you'll stay with me for 9 more minutes, my friend, I'm here to tell you, I'm just about to serve stuff that's going to make a difference for you. The greatest gap between successful and unsuccessful people is the thinking gap, how we think. I'm not talking about intellect. I'm not talking about IQ. I'm talking about successful people think differently than unsuccessful people. I'm going to give you an example right now. Successful people in every difficult situation believe there's always an answer, and people that don't do well in a crisis believe that there's not an answer. If I think that there is an answer, I'll become a victor. And if I think there is no answer, I'll become a victim. It's just that simple. My father. My father's 98, and he's an incredible inspiration to me. He's been very successful. But he grew up in a little town in Georgetown, Ohio, about 25 miles from Cincinnati, just a very poor community. And as he was growing up, he said, John, all of us were poor except for 3 families, and the 3 families that were not poor, he said, I had the privilege, because he was a hardworking kid, that I would leave school and I would do errands for those 3 families. And so I got to know them all. And he said, I came to the conclusion by the time I was a junior in high school, the only difference between the 3 successful families and the rest of us is that they thought differently. And that goes back to the greatest gap is the thinking gap. So during the Depression, during a very difficult time when my father was still very young, everybody was out of work. So what did everybody do every day? They got in the bread line and they waited for some food. It was a very difficult time. But can I tell you that during that very difficult economic downturn, crisis, my father held 3 part-time jobs. And while everyone else was waiting to get bread, my father was earning money to buy bread. You say, John, what happened? How did he do it? Well, it's very simple. He thought differently. You see, he would go down to the hardware store and say, look, I know that you can't afford to hire me. It's a very difficult financial time, but I love to work. And so could I work for free for you today? And just tell me some things you'd like to have done in the store. And the owner would say, well, you got to understand, son, I can't pay you. That's it. I don't want to be paid. I want to work for free for you today. And that's what he would do all day. Work for free. At the end of the day, shake his hand, say, I hope I helped you. And of course, the owner said, my gosh, I just wish I could help pay you. No, it's okay. You don't have to pay me. I just wanted to work for you. He said, by the way, if any time there is a little bit of an opening for a job, he said, would you remember me? Well, of course the owner's going to remember him. He's become unforgettable. He worked for free for a whole day. Dad would go to another store the next day, another store the next day. For a whole month, he went to a different place of employment and just worked for free. And in about 6 weeks, he started getting calls. Hey, we've got could you work for 8 hours a week for us? Yeah, well, sure, I can work 8 hours and we can pay you for 8 hours. Can't pay you full time. Oh, yeah, I could. You want? He had 3 part-time jobs. Everybody else is out of work. What was the difference? Same place, same crisis, but not the same thinking. My precious friend, there is always an answer. Don't let anyone take that away from you. I will not let anyone take that away from me. There's always an answer. The third and last perspective I want to give you today, because I think this is just absolutely huge in your life and in my life and everybody's life. Not only is there always an answer, but number 3, allow adversity to help you discover who you really are. Because adversity will move us. It'll move us. And sometimes we need to be moved to find our niche, okay? Now, I'm going to give you a real corny, cute story. This is just as corny as can be, so just hang with me for a minute. But I'm talking about allowing adversity to help you to discover who you really are. It's the kid who was playing baseball just by himself in his backyard. His mom was looking out the window, and he's the typical kid throwing the ball up and then swinging the bat. And so when he saw his mom looking out, he looked at his mom and said, Mom, I am the greatest hitter in the world. He threw the ball up and he missed the ball, and he said, strike 1. He wasn't discouraged, picked the ball back up, threw it up the second time. Strike 2. Mom's kind of looking at him, he swung twice, he hadn't got a hit yet, and he said, it's okay, Mom, I'm the greatest hitter in the world. I only need 1 strike. I'm the greatest hitter in the world. And this time he threw the ball up, swung as hard as he could, missed the whole ball, but he swung so hard he's now on the ground. His mom's kind of feeling a little bit bad for, quote, the greatest hitter in the world who just struck out. And she said, honey, I'm so sorry. He said, oh, no, don't be sorry, Mommy. It's okay. Listen, I've discovered something. I just struck out the greatest hitter in the world. I am the greatest pitcher in the world. I love that story. It's corny. But I give you that story because, my friend, some of us need to be moved. And when we get moved, we're going to get moved to the place where he really should be. 2 quick personal examples. Most of you know that I started my career off as a pastor, had a degree in psychology, counseling. And so I did a lot of counseling for the first couple years. It was kind of expected of me, but there was a problem. And the problem was I wasn't good at it. I don't have the patience. I don't have the mercy gifts. I lack all the qualities of a good counselor. And so people would come to counseling with me, but it was wearing me out and it was wearing them out. And I really wasn't that good. In fact, after about 2 years of doing something I wasn't really good at, I'll never forget. I just said, I'm not good at this. I came to the bottom. Okay. I came to the bottom and said, I'm never going to be good at counseling. And so I remember to my little small country congregation, I one Sunday announced, I'm not going to be doing any more counseling. And that's when the lights all came on, because those farmers, they just started clapping. They started clapping and said, oh, he's finally realized he's not any good at that. And I wasn't any good at it. Now, through my not being any good and failure in counseling, within about 6 months, I began to, instead of counseling, working on the weaknesses of people, I began to focus on the strengths of people, what they did well to make them better. And immediately I found that I'm a terrible counselor, but I'm a fabulous equipper. If I wouldn't have been bad in counseling, I'd have never become an equipper. I had to get bad in something to move me to get good in something else. And for many of you, that's what this crisis is going to do. It's going to move you to higher ground. Last story. At 51, 22 years ago, I had a heart attack. And in that heart attack was literally at a Christmas Eve party with our companies. When I was battling for my life for a couple of hours there, it was pretty tough. You know you're not in good shape when they bring you in and you have one doctor and about an hour and a half later you got 5 doctors in the room. And it wasn't going very well. I needed to have a heart cath. I was in the wrong hospital. It's a long story. I don't want to go into it, but here's what you got to catch. Here's what I don't want you to miss. Don't miss this. Okay? In this incredible crisis of my life and death crisis that I had, when I came out of it and I came through of it, it made me such a better man. You say, okay, John, what happened? What was that turn in your life? The turn was very simple. I felt that my life was spared because my calling was important. And all of a sudden, it raised the stature of that calling, and it raised the stature of what I was doing. The calling got bigger, and I determined to get better. And I can say in the last 22 years of my life, they've been the best 22 years of my life. In fact, I would say the last year of my life has been the best year of my life. I'm 73, and I'm still going up. But it was that crisis. It was the fact that I came out of that and said to myself, I'm here for a purpose. I'm here for a reason. The calling is bigger. I've got to get better.
Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results.